Hello everyone, welcome to Cyber Platter. This video will help you prepare for your CCSP examination. Today we will cover a portion of Domain 4, that is Cloud Application Security. So the agenda for today is to cover the first three sections of Domain 4. So that includes advocate training and awareness for application security, SDLC, Cloud SDLC process, and how to apply the secure software development lifecycle. The rest of the sections I will cover in a different video. Please go through that as well. Training and awareness for the developers and programmers. Training and awareness relates directly to application developers and how programmers need to have sufficient understanding of risks in the cloud environment to properly design secure software. Because applications manipulate data, we must determine the sensitivity of our data, or we may end up using it in a way that we unnecessarily expose data. For instance, does the data or the results of its manipulation and processing contain personally identifiable information, that is PII, such as name, address, social security number, or health information? If so, the application, along with the data to be stored and manipulated, may not be a good fit for a cloud application solution. We should also consider what would be the impact in certain situations, like what if the data became widely public and widely distributed, right? Including crossing geographic boundaries. What if an employee of the cloud service provider accessed the application? What if the process or function was manipulated by an outsider, or failed to provide expected results, or the data was unexpectedly changed, or the application was unavailable for a period of time? These questions form the basis of an information gathering exercise to identify and understand the requirements of an application and its associated information assets. Moving an application to the cloud may or may not reduce risks, which is why it is important to evaluate your situation and application before migration. It is also important to consider the responsibilities associated with using cloud data. When we begin discussing cloud applications, data concerns must be adequately addressed, as it is vital that the data owner understand very clearly the responsibilities of each of the players in this situation. There are different responsibilities for each service and delivery model in cloud. However, under current laws, the data owner is always legally responsible for securing data. This is true even when the provider is tasked with financial liability according to the contract. On the other hand, if the nature and sensitivity of the data is such that it changes constantly or is of little real value, then moving the associated applications and related data to the cloud may make good sense, both from a computing and storage perspective, and more importantly, from the business perspective. An example for this might be a wholesaler that uses images of products with SKU values so that the customers can order items online. As long as the actual purchase occurs in a different application, the catalog of items would be of little value to anyone other than the customer placing the order. In addition, as prices change rapidly, any associated prices would also be worth very little. Therefore, the catalog application and its associated images and pricing would more than likely be easily moved to the cloud and secured with minimal effort and risk. There are also instances where it makes more sense to move an application into the cloud because of the security is better. For instance, many banking institutions host their primary, or what is called their core banking application, in the cloud specifically because they do not have the resources, experience, and tools to securely manage the applications themselves. The core application is generally what they use for day to day teller transactions, deposit, withdrawals, and so forth. Cloud providers of these core services generally have 24/7 staff who monitor everything and are highly skilled and trained in these areas, providing resources many companies simply cannot afford. For these specific providers, there are also regulatory incentives to ensure that data is secure and the applications work as designed. Even in instances where they may have code issues, it is usually a matter of the application not doing something as opposed to it performing a transaction that would cause problems. These applications are thoroughly tested before being allowed to touch a customer's account information. An often used term for moving an entire application to the cloud without any significant changes is forklifting. This refers to the idea of moving an existing legacy enterprise application to the cloud with little or no code changes. These are often self contained standalone applications that have operated successfully in the enterprise environment. However, dependency on infrastructure aspects of the legacy enterprise that might not be replicated in the cloud can cause serious problems in transition efforts. Other issues, such as the use of proprietary libraries that the cloud environment does not have, can also inhibit transition efforts. In addition to the fact that not all apps are natively ready for the cloud, many apps cannot move to the cloud at all without some type of extensive code changes. Many applications, particularly Office applications such as accounting and word processing programs, now have alternative cloud based versions, minimizing or eliminating the need to move those applications at all. Developers often face challenges when working in a new and unfamiliar environment. For instance, they may be used to working in a certain language or framework that may not be available to them on a particular platform. Developers working in the traditional IT environment may not be used to the particular risks, threats, and vulnerabilities associated with cloud computing. Moreover, there may be a lack of pertinent documentation for moving specific applications to the cloud. Developers might not know how to approach migration. This is even more true for proprietary applications exclusive to the developer's organization. Developers might have a steep learning curve for their own professional skills and knowledge if they have never worked in the cloud before, and they might not have the time, budget, or discipline to conduct suitable training. The next topic is the challenges that are faced by the developers and administrators when migrating to the cloud. Multi tenancy. This is the concept of sharing resources with other cloud customers simultaneously. This is not the practice in traditional environment, so it might be a challenge for a developer to, or administrator to understand this concept. The next one is third party admins. Administrators in the cloud data center have physical access to the devices that contain customer data, but they are not under the control of the customers. Deployment models: public, private, community, and hybrid models. In many cloud deployments, the customer will no longer have control of the physical hardware that contains their data. In the traditional environment, software developers did not have to consider or contend with the possibility that the programs would be running on hardware that was not owned and or controlled by the organization using the software. Service models: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. Developers may or may not have the control over the particular infrastructure, platform, or even application stack that they must work with. Another area of complexity and concern for the security professionals is that of understanding the appropriate use and design of encryption technologies in the cloud and with cloud applications. Encryption is one of the more effective control mechanisms for securing digital data, and in many cases, it is only the viable option for the cloud customer for securing data because the customer won't have administrative or physical control of the cloud resources and infrastructures. Not all applications will run effectively or securely in the cloud. They must be examined on a case by case basis with these factors that we already discussed today and characteristics in mind. Now let's discuss some of the common cloud application deployment pitfalls. The first one is on-premises apps do not always transfer and vice versa. On-premises applications are usually designed to be run in a traditional enterprise environment where data is accessed, processed, and stored locally. Moving these to the cloud is not always practical or even possible. Traditional enterprise application developers often do not have to contend with speed or bandwidth issues due to running on a local area network. A lack of routing involvement and high speed switches make these very quick and responsive even if code is sometimes not well written. One example would be when the application makes numerous calls in order to assemble a single piece of data as opposed to making a single call and collecting it all at once. These design issues can slow a cloud application down to the point that it simply does not function properly. These calls create numerous sessions and take up processor and memory resources, and eventually, entire systems can slow to a crawl. Traditional on premises applications are not typically asked to share resources such as CPU, RAM, and bandwidth, allowing poorly designed code to run adequately on a faster local network but then failing to meet expectations when moved to the cloud. Poor documentation. The lack of poor documentation is not a new risk introduced by cloud computing, but it is instead a harsh reality in our field. Developers are constantly being urged to rush applications into production, while documentation is a slow, methodical process that does not add to functionality or performance. Moreover, the skills necessary for software design don't often overlap into the skill set for technical documentation, so that the two efforts are largely performed by different people, which adds another layer of complication and delay to the process. Moreover, in organizations that use custom proprietary software in a traditional environment, it is very possible that no documentation exists for moving the application to the cloud because it has never been tried before. During migration, developers do not have any guidance to assist them in this situation. Not all apps are cloud ready. Some applications, specifically database applications, might run even better in the cloud. Typically, cloud storage is faster than older enterprise spinning disks, and the data usually has a much smaller distance to travel in order to reach compute and storage components because they are all stored in the same logical units. However, they are not all ready for the cloud. Often, code must be re-evaluated and altered in order to run effectively in the cloud. Encryption might be needed that had not been used in the past, and a host of other issues exist. Even though some apps will eventually run successfully in the cloud, they are not always immediately ready and may require code or configuration changes in order to work effectively. Tenancy separation. In the traditional enterprise, where all infrastructure and resources are owned and controlled by the organization, there is no risk of other tenants accessing the organization's data through inadvertent data bleed between applications, operating systems, guest images, and users. The exact opposite is true of the cloud environment. All those possibilities exist, so the risk of each must be addressed by significant use of countermeasures that ensure access control, process isolation, denial of guest or host escape attempts, and all these countermeasures will be dependent on remote administration and will most likely require significant negotiation and cooperation with the provider. Complexities of integration. Integrating new applications with existing ones can be a key part of the development process. When developers and operational resources do not have open or unrestricted access to supporting components and services, integration can be complicated, particularly where the cloud service provider manages infrastructure, applications, and integration platforms. For a troubleshooting perspective, it can prove difficult to track or collect events and transactions across interdependent or underlying components. In an effort to reduce these complexities where possible, the cloud service provider's API should be used. Use of secure validated APIs. One feature that makes cloud based operations so desirable is the flexibility to use current datasets in new and novel ways. Use of secure validated APIs. One feature that makes cloud based operations so desirable is the flexibility to use current datasets in new and novel ways. This capability is offered and enhanced through the deployment of a wide variety of APIs, many of which can be chosen by the cloud customer and more that can be selected by the user. Although the variety of options is enticing, it brings an attendant risk. The APIs used to provide this capability might be of questionable origin. It is cloud customers' responsibility to formalize a policy and process for vetting, selecting, and deploying only those APIs that can be validated in some fashion, a method for determining the trustworthiness of the source and the software itself. This process should be included in the organization's acquisition and deployment program as well as the change management effort. The next topic is assessing common vulnerabilities. Applications that run in the cloud should adhere to best practice guidance and guidelines for the assessment and ongoing management of vulnerabilities. Implementation of an application risk management program addresses not only vulnerabilities but also all risks associated with applications. The most common software vulnerabilities are found in OWASP Top 10, that is Open Web Application Security Project. Here we are not only talking about the recent OWASP Top 10 but also the ones that were mentioned in 2017 and 2013 so that you are aware of the descriptions and the prevention methods. Injection. When a malicious user attempts to inject a string of some type into a field in order to manipulate the application's actions or reveal unauthorized data is called as injection. Examples include such things as SQL, LDAP, and OS injections. If the injection is successful, either unauthorized data is seen or other manipulative actions are taken. Let's see some of the prevention techniques for injection. The preferred option is to use a safe API which avoids the use of the interpreter entirely or provides a parameterized interface. Be careful with APIs such as stored procedures that are parameterized but can still introduce injection under the hood. If the parameterized API is not available, you should carefully escape special characters using the specific escape syntax for that interpreter. Input validation, that is, whitelisting, is also a recommended prevention technique. We can also use prepared statements and stored procedures. Least privilege also helps in this prevention. Broken authentication and session management. When a malicious user is able to break a session and steal items like tokens and passwords or keys, broken authentication and session management takes place. This then allows the malicious user to hijack the system. Let's see some of the prevention techniques. A single set of strong authentication and session management controls should be used. Use complex passwords. Store passwords with proper encryption. Use of multi-factor authentication. Use proven authentication methods. Strong efforts should be made to avoid cross-site scripting flaws which can be used to steal session IDs. Insecure direct object references. A direct object reference occurs when a developer exposes a reference to an internal implementation object such as a file, directory, or database scheme. Without an access control check or other protection, attackers can manipulate these references to access unauthorized data. Let's see some of the prevention techniques. Avoid using direct object reference. Use per user or session indirect object references. This prevents attackers from directly targeting unauthorized resources. The next recommendation is to use access control to check that the authorized user has requested for the object. Cross-site scripting. Cross-site scripting is one of the most widely seen application flaws next to injections. Cross-site scripting occurs when an application allows untrusted data to be sent to a web browser without proper validation or escaping. This then allows the malicious user to execute code or hijack sessions in the user's browser. The prevention techniques, some of the prevention techniques are input validation, enable a content security policy, apply context sensitive encoding, escape untrusted HTTP data. Insecure deserialization. Let's first try to understand what is serialization and deserialization. Serialization is the process of turning some object into a data format that can be restored later. People often serialize objects in order to save them to storage or to send as part of communications. Deserialization is the reverse of that process, taking data structured from some format and rebuilding it into an object. Today, the most popular data format for deserializing data is JSON. Before that, it was XML. Unfortunately, the features of these native deserialization mechanisms can be repurposed for malicious effect when operating on untrusted data. Attacks against deserializers have been found to allow denial of service, access control, and remote code execution attacks. Some of the techniques to prevent insecure deserialization are use integrity checks and encrypt, log to detect insecure deserialization, isolate code that deserializes. Security misconfiguration. Good security requires having a secure configuration defined and deployed for the application frameworks, application server, web server, database server, and platform. Secure settings should be defined, implemented, and maintained as defaults are often insecure. Additionally, software should be kept up to date, that is, patch and update your software, harden all the systems, and we should also have the understanding of the application and its settings. We should test those configurations. Security misconfigurations are often unintentional, caused by authorized entities, and a result of basic human error. Broken access control. Exploitation of access control is a core skill of attackers. SAST and DAS, that is static application security testing and dynamic application security testing tools, can detect the absence of access control but cannot verify if it is functional when it is present. Access control is detectable using manual means or possible through automation for the absence of access controls in certain frameworks. So we should always properly implement access controls. Logging and alerting should be there. And as I mentioned before, manual testing is the key. Sensitive data exposure. The disclosure of information such as PII, medical data, credit card material, and so on is sensitive data exposure. Without proper controls in place, sensitive data can be leaked by an application or system. Some of the prevention techniques are classify data processed, stored, or transmitted by an application. Identify which data is sensitive according to privacy laws, regulatory requirements, or business needs. Apply controls as per the classification. Don't store sensitive data unnecessarily. Discard it as soon as possible or use PCI DSS compliant tokenization or even truncation. Data that is not retained cannot be stolen. Make sure to encrypt all sensitive data at rest. Ensure up to date and strong standard algorithms, protocols, and keys are in place. Use proper key management. Encrypt all data in transit with secure protocols such as TLS. Enforce encryption using directives like HTTP Strict Transport Security, that is HSTS. Disable caching for response that contains sensitive data. Store passwords using strong, adaptive, and salted hashing functions. Verify independently the effectiveness of configuration and settings. XML external entities. Attackers can exploit vulnerable XML processors if they can upload XML or include hostile content in an XML document, exploiting vulnerable code dependencies or integrations. The prevention techniques recommendations are: whenever possible, use less complex data formats such as JSON and avoiding serialization of sensitive data. Patch and upgrade all XML processors and libraries in use by the application or on the underlying operating system. Disable XML external entity and DTD processing in all XML parsers in the application. Implement positive, that is, whitelisting server side input validation, filtering, or sanitization to prevent hostile data within XML documents, headers, or nodes. Verify that XML or XSL file upload functionality validates incoming XML using XSD validation or similar. SAS tools, that is, static application security testing tools, can help detect XXE in source code, although manual code review is the best alternative in large, complex applications with many integrations. Missing function level access control. An application should always verify function level access privileges before granting access of that functionality to the user interface. If this is not implemented properly, malicious users may be able to forge requests that will allow them functionality without authorization. Some of the prevention techniques for missing function level access control are: think about the process for managing entitlements and ensure you can update and audit easily. Don't hard code. The enforcement mechanisms should deny all access by default, requiring explicit grants to specific roles for access to every function. If the function is involved in a workflow, check to make sure the conditions are in proper state to allow access. Cross-site request forgery, CSRF. A CSRF manipulates a logged-on user's browser to send a forged HTTP request along with cookies and other authentication information in an effort to force the victim's browser to generate a request that a vulnerable application thinks is a legitimate request from the user. Some of the prevention techniques are: the preferred option is to include the unique token in a hidden field. This causes the value to be sent in the body of the HTTP request, avoiding its inclusion in the URL, which is more prone to exposure. The unique token can also be included in the URL itself or a URL parameter. However, such placement runs a greater risk that the URL will be exposed to an attacker, thus compromising the secret token. Requiring the user to re-authenticate or prove they are user by using techniques such as CAPTCHA can also protect against CSRF. Using components with known vulnerabilities. While it is easy to find already written exploits for many known vulnerabilities, other vulnerabilities require concentrated effort to develop a custom exploit. Prevalence of this issue is very widespread. Component heavy development patterns can lead to development teams not even understanding which components they use in their application or API, much less keeping them up to date. Some of the prevention techniques are: remove unused dependencies, unnecessary features, components, files, and documentation. Continuously inventory the versions of both client-side and server-side components like frameworks, libraries, and their dependencies. Continuously monitor sources like CVE, NVD for vulnerabilities in the components. Use software composition analysis tools to automate the process. Subscribe to email alerts for security vulnerabilities related to components you use. Only obtain components from official sources over secure links. Preferred signed packages to reduce the chance of including a modified or malicious component. Monitor for libraries and components that are unmaintained or do not create security patches for older versions. If patching is not possible, consider deploying a virtual patch to monitor, detect, or protect against the discovered issues. Insufficient logging and monitoring. Exploitation of insufficient logging and monitoring is the bedrock of nearly every major incident. Attackers rely on the lack of monitoring and timely response to achieve their goals without being detected. One strategy for determining if you have sufficient monitoring is to examine the logs following penetration testing. The tester's actions should be recorded sufficiently to understand what damages they may have inflicted. Ensure all login, access control failures, and server side input validation failures can be logged with sufficient user context to identify suspicious or malicious accounts and held for sufficient time to allow delayed forensic analysis. Ensure that logs are generated in a format that can be easily consumed by a centralized log management solutions. Ensure high value transactions have an audit trail with integrity controls to prevent tampering or deletion. Establish effective monitoring and alerting such that suspicious activities are detected and responded to in a timely fashion. Establish or adopt an incident response and recovery plan. Unvalidated redirects and forwards. Oftentimes, developers will use redirects without validation, which may expose applications to untrusted data or other applications. Without this validation, malicious users can alter the redirects to point the user to malicious sites such as phishing sites. Some of the prevention techniques related to unvalidated redirects and forwards. It is highly recommended to avoid using redirects and forwards. If used, don't involve user parameters in calculating the destination. If destination parameters cannot be avoided, ensure that the supplied value is valid and authorized for the user. Cloud Secure Software Development Lifecycle (SDLC). The cloud SDLC has the same foundational structure as the traditional SDLC, although there are some factors when dealing with the cloud that need to be taken into account. The first phase is planning and requirement analysis. Business and security requirements and standards are being determined here. This phase is the main focus of the project managers and stakeholders. Meeting with managers, stakeholders, and users are held to determine requirements. The software development lifecycle calls for all the business requirements, functional and non functional, to be defined even before initial design begins. Planning for the quality assurance requirements and identification of risk associated with the project are also conducted in the planning stage. The requirements are then analyzed for their validity and the possibility of incorporating them into the system to be developed. The next phase is defining. The defining phase is meant to clearly define and document the product requirements to place them in front of the customers and get them approved. This is done through a requirement specification document, which consists of all the product requirements to be designed and developed during the project lifecycle. Designing. System design helps in specifying hardware and system requirements and helps in defining overall system architecture. The system design specifications serve as input for the next phase of the model. Threat modeling and secure design elements should be undertaken and discussed here. Deployment. Upon receiving the system's design documents, work is divided into modules or units and actual coding starts. This is typically the longest phase of the software development lifecycle. Activities include code review, unit testing, and static analysis. Testing. In the testing phase of application development, activities such as initial penetration testing and vulnerability scanning against the application are performed. We will use techniques and tools for both dynamic and static testing or dynamic application security testing (DAST) and static application security testing (SAST). Generally, at least two types of testing take place: functional and security testing. Functional testing should ensure that the software performs whatever task it is intended for completely and accurately in a manner resistant to loss or interruption. Security testing ensures that whatever controls were included in the software are working effectively and accomplishing their purpose. Secure operations phase. Once all the other stages are finished, the application enters into secure operations phase. This is after thorough testing has been successfully completed and the application and its environment are deemed secure. Proper software configuration management and versioning are essential to application security. There are some tools that can be used to ensure that the software is configured according to specified requirements. Tools like Puppet and Chef. According to Puppet Labs, Puppet is a configuration management system that allows you to define the state of your IT infrastructure and then automatically ensures the correct state. With Chef, you can automate how you build, deploy, and manage your infrastructure. The Chef server stores your recipes as well as other configuration data. The Chef client is installed on each server, virtual machine, container, or networking device you manage. These are called nodes. The client periodically polls the Chef server for the latest policy and the state of your network. If anything on the node is out of date, the client brings it up to date. The goal of these applications is to ensure that configurations are updated as needed and there is consistency in versioning. The secure operation phase calls for some of the activities like dynamic analysis, vulnerability assessment, and penetration testing. This is as part of continuous monitoring plan. Activity monitoring, layer 7 firewalls such as web application firewalls. Disposal. Once the software has reached the end of its useful life or has been replaced by a newer or different application, it must then be securely disposed of. Most software companies have a published software lifecycle as part of their customer facing information. It includes the lifespans of the applications with specifics about things like how long or what kind of security patches will be available to the customer. Software that is no longer supported by the vendor poses a risk to the enterprise in many ways, particularly because the vendor will no longer offer security patches for newly discovered vulnerabilities. From a cloud perspective, it is challenging to ensure the data is properly disposed of because you have no way to physically remove the drives. Crypto shredding is the only effective way of deletion in cloud. Crypto shredding is effectively summed up as the deletion of the key used to encrypt data that's stored in the cloud. ISO IEC 27034-1 Standards for Secure Application Development. The International Organization for Standardization, ISO, has created an approach organizations can use for tracking security controls used in their software. ISO IEC 27034-1 provides an overview of application security that introduces definitive concepts, principles, and processes involved in application security. In doing so, it describes two documents an organization can use internally as inventories of controls. The Organizational Normative Framework (ONF) is the framework for all components of application security controls and best practices cataloged and leveraged by the organization. The Application Normative Frameworks (ANFs) are subsets of the ONF for each specific application. The ANF shares the applicable parts of the ONF needed to achieve an application's required level of security and the level of trust desired. The ANF to ONF relationship is a one-to-one relationship. Every application has an ANF that maps back to the ONF. However, the ONF to ANF relationship is one to many. The ONF has many ANFs, but ANF has only one ONF. Say, for example, there is a company which has two programs. One program has password and encryption as its application controls. The other program has input validation and integrity check as its application controls. Each list of each program is that software's ANF. So that means this company has two ANFs, one for each software application. The company also has an ONF. The list of all the controls used in all the programs within the company is called as an ONF. So it includes password, integrity check, input validation, and encryption. The next topic is threat modeling. The process of identifying, communicating, and understanding threats and how to mitigate them in order to protect valuable assets is called as threat modeling. The first threat modeling we will discuss today is STRIDE. The STRIDE threat model is a system of classifying known threats based on the kinds of exploits used or the motivation of the attacker. The STRIDE acronym stands for S for spoofing, T for tampering, R for repudiation, I for information disclosure, D for denial of service, E for elevation of privileges. The first one is spoofing. Can the identity of the entity using the application be obscured in some way? Does the user have the capability to appear as a different user? Tampering. Does the application allow a user to make unauthorized modifications to actual data, affecting the integrity of information or communications? R. Repudiation. Is the user capable of denying they took part in a transaction, or does the application track and log the user's actions? I. Information disclosure. Does the application reveal information, either the data being processed or information about the application's function while it runs? D. Denial of service. Is there a way to shut down the application through unauthorized means? This might include crashing, overloading, or restarting the application. E. Elevation of privilege. Can a user change their level of permissions in order to perform unauthorized action, such as gaining administrative control to the application? Stride is particularly useful as part of the SDLC in attempting to identify vulnerabilities throughout the build process. The Stride model enables us to do this. When we are evaluating cloud application security, these six concepts help in identifying and classifying threats or vulnerabilities and help form a common language used to describe them. That way, we can systematically address them through better coding techniques or other control mechanisms. The next threat modeling that we will be discussing is PASTA, the process for attack simulation and threat analysis. PASTA is a risk based threat model developed in 2012 that supports dynamic threat analysis. The PASTA methodology integrates business objectives with technical requirements, application risks, and attack modeling. This attacker centric perspective of the application produces a mitigation strategy that includes threat enumeration, impact analysis, and scoring. The PASTA methodology has 7 stages. The first phase is define objectives. During this step, you define key business objectives and critical security and compliance requirements. In addition, you perform a preliminary business impact analysis (BIA) that identifies potential business impact considerations. Define technical scope. You can't protect something until you know it exists and needs protection. During this step, you document the boundaries of the technical environment and identify the scope of all technical assets that need threat analysis. In addition to the application boundaries, you must identify all infrastructure, application, and software dependencies. The goal is to capture a high level but comprehensive view of all servers, hosts, devices, applications, protocols, and data that need to be protected. Perform application decomposition. This step requires you to focus on understanding the data flows between your assets and identify all application entry points and trust boundaries. You should leave this step with a clear understanding of all data sources, the parties that access those data sources, and all use cases for data access within your application. Basically, who should perform what actions on which components of your application. Complete a threat analysis. In this step, you review threat data from within your environment, like SIM feeds, WAF logs, and so on, as well as externally available threat intelligence that is related to your application. For example, if you run a banking app, numerous resources are available to learn about emergent cyber threats to financial services companies. You should be seeking to understand threat attack scenarios that are relevant to your specific application, environment, and data. At the end of this stage, you should have a list of the most likely attack vectors for your given application. Conduct a vulnerability analysis. During this step, you focus on identifying all vulnerabilities within your code and correlating them to the threat attack scenarios identified in the step 4, that is, complete a threat analysis. You should be reviewing your operating system, database, network, and application scans, as well as all dynamic and static code analysis results to enumerate and score existing vulnerabilities. The primary output of this stage is a correlated mapping of all threat attack vectors to existing vulnerabilities and impacted assets. Model attacks. During this stage, you simulate attacks that could exploit identified vulnerabilities. This step helps determine the true likelihood and impact of each identified attack vector. After this step, you should have a strong understanding of your application's attack surface. For example, what bad things could happen to which assets within your application environment? The next one is conduct a risk and impact analysis. During this final stage, you take everything you have learned in the previous stages and refine your BIA, that is business impact analysis. You also prioritize risks that need remediation and build a risk mitigation strategy to identify countermeasures for all residual risks. The next topic is cloud specific risks. I have already uploaded a video on Cloud Security Alliance's cloud computing top threats, that is treacherous 12, notorious 9. It includes all these risks. What are these risks? How can they impact your environment and how to prevent them? So I'm not going to repeat that again. I will add the link to that video in the description. Please go through it. It is very important. The next topic is software configuration management and versioning. The final phase of the SDLC involves maintaining an application after deployment for the full lifetime of the application. A big part of ongoing software maintenance is configuration management and application versioning. What is configuration management? Configuration management is the process of tracking and controlling configuration changes to systems and software. What is versioning? Versioning is the process of creating and managing multiple releases of an application, each with same general function but incrementally improved or otherwise updated. Configuration management is a major consideration for any development team in any environment. Ensuring that systems and applications remain properly configured and in harmony with one another is an important challenge. In cloud environments where systems freely spin up and down and resources can be rapidly provisioned on the fly, configuration management becomes an even greater concern for developers and security professionals alike. Whereas traditional data center environments usually involve configuration updates being made directly on each server, cloud environments operate at massive scale that makes this task nearly impossible. And cloud customers typically lack the access or control to directly manage these systems anyway. Instead, in cloud environments, address configuration management by building and managing software images that are updated, tested, and deployed throughout the customer's cloud environment. To maintain consistent configuration management and software versions, cloud developers should generally seek to use automated tools and processes. For tracking source code changes throughout the SDLC, developers can use version control tools like Git or Apache Subversion. Both of these tools are open source version control systems that are used by large and small organizations to manage their code development and releases. A large number of open source and commercial tools are available for maintaining system configurations and software versions. Aside from the tools and features built into most cloud service provider offering, developers also use solutions like Puppet, Chef, etc. These tools enable a process known as infrastructure as code (IAC) that allows developers to view and manipulate their IT environments directly from lines of code using a programming or configuration language. Developers can use these tools to monitor and maintain system and application configurations, which allows centralized configuration management across their entire environment. Many other code and configuration management tools are available, including the options offered directly by some cloud service providers. Your organization should carefully consider your business and technical needs to determine which tools work the best for your software development. The next topic is quality assurance QA. Throughout development, the process itself should be managed and inspected in such a way as to reduce the possibility of introducing errors or harming the end product. This management or inspection is referred to as quality assurance. Quality assurance measures many variables to ensure that quality standards are being met. Some of these variables are availability, mean time between failure MTBF, outage duration, performance, reliability, capacity, response time. This is the end of part 1 of domain 4. There is part 2 as well. I will see you in that video. If you liked our video today, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. I will see you again. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.